Hey everyone, it's Julian, and today I wanted to do another meta update, but today we're going to be focusing on the Pro League that happened a couple of days ago. And of course, the Pro League is the Japanese professional league for Shadowverse. It's a lot of fun watching these really high-level streamers and players play for, a good amount of, prizes and stuff, and it's sort of a long-running league. So this is going to be different from the Rage tournaments in Japan, but they're very tied together. It is under the Rage, category, right? So there's going to be a lot of, Japanese tournaments and stuff coming up here soon, so it's really fun to get our first peek at it. A lot of the big streamers and stuff are also pro players, so a lot of them kind of went dark for the last couple of days and then, came because they were, practicing strategies and stuff for this, but it's very fun and really, reminiscent of that old Shadowverse, esports level type stuff. So I will be sort of covering on a stream a lot of those games. Probably later tonight. We are going to stream tonight, so if you guys are interested in that, check that out. And yeah, before we get into it, I will be covering the rules of the Pro League because it's a little bit different. And of course, we're going to be talking about the decks and stuff and how this could influence the ladder and how it's already kind of influenced the ladder and stuff like that. And how it could influence me because I need to pick 2 decks for this weekend for the SEO finals, of course. So I've been really racking my brain on what to do. So we're going to be talking about all that, but before we do, I just want to say if you guys are enjoying the videos, it'd be awesome if you could like and subscribe. We're going to be doing more of these type of videos, more of these meta stuff, and also just talk about specific decks coming up here shortly. I will be doing a video on everyone's favorite deck, that dragon deck that a lot of people like here soon. So here's that. But yeah, I just wanted to say, please, like and subscribe. That'd be really awesome. And also, if you are looking to get into competitive or just want to have a community or people to play the game with, our Discord is really growing right now. And if you're interested in that, I'm going to leave a description in there. A lot of nice people in there, a lot of cool people that want to play the game, and I always see them playing in the chats and stuff, so very awesome. If you guys are interested in that, check that out. Okay, let's get into the video. Let's cover the rules for the Pro League first. So, the Shadowverse Pro League is 4 teams. It's the Detonation Focus Me, Yokohama F. Marinos, the Yoshimoto Gaming, and the Levanaga Hokkaido. I hope I said all those names right. And the way it works is it's a season, right? There's going to be a season, and you get points and stuff. But the way each sort of match works is the team selects the players and classes for the first through third battles. I should also say that each team has 5 players and 5 decks. So the team goes, okay, we're going to be, it's almost like a batting order, right? You hand in the batting order of 1 through 3, right? And that's just set, right? And everyone knows before the game start, or before the match starts, that those are the matches that are set, the first 3. So first to third battles will be conducted in that order. Then if it's decided, or if it's not decided, right? So it's first, because you have to win 3. It's like best 3 out of 5. Or it's, best 3 out of 5. I was like, I think that's right. Yeah. So, if someone doesn't sweep in those first 3 matches, then a strategy time will be set, and players and the teams decide the 4th and 5th battles. Then the 4th battle will be held, and if a decision is still not reached, then the 5th battle will be held. So, some of these classes and decks that are brought are very sort of meta picks to target certain decks, and we'll see that. But a lot of people brought the exact same deck, so kind of interesting rules. And I'm basically saying this because Shadowverse is a weird game where every region and every tournament has different rule sets, so it's really hard to sort of take the analysis and the info that we get from these tournaments and apply it strictly to ladder. It's pretty hard because ladder, you're just queuing up, going in, immediately. There's a lot more strategy and stuff too. Even 2-deck best of 1. The thing I'm going to be playing in this weekend, 2-deck best of 3, or you have to win both decks. They don't do it anymore with 3-deck 1 ban, and just stuff like that, right? So A lot of different strategies and stuff that make it hard for us to just go, oh, that's the best deck in the format, easy peasy, we're just going to play it on ladder, whatever. We kind of have to, decipher this info, right? So that is the rule. So now I kind of want to talk about the deck lists, and yeah, we'll just kind of go from there. So the first team, so these are the classes brought. So is that DFM? DFM brought Forest, Sword, Rune, Abyss. Abyss and Haven. Yokohama brought Forest, Sword, Rune, Abyss, and Portal. Yoshimoto Gaming brought Forest, Sword, Rune, Abyss, and Haven. And Hokkaido brought Forest, Sword, Rune, Abyss, and Haven. So very, very unique meta, huh? Yeah. We're in a very sort of, we know what the best is. We know what the best stuff is. But there's still tech options and stuff we can take from these tournaments and stuff to help us change the sort of levels of those decks, right? I don't think those decks are going anywhere by those. The three I'm sort of thinking about, Rune, Sword, and Forest. I think those are just the three. And then other decks sort of have good matchups into the other things, right? But I think as the meta has evolved, we're like 3 or 4 weeks away from set 3. It's going to be a lot of sort of positioning of those decks. I don't think anything's... I'm sorry, y'all. I do not think Fenny Dragon is going to come up and shock people, So I apologize. But yeah, let's talk about the deck list, and we can kind of get some info about like different options and stuff they brought, right? So I think what we're going to do, because everyone brought almost the exact same deck, I think I'm going to talk about each class and compare the deck list, right? So I think we're going to do that. So we're going to start with Forest, and then we'll do Sword, Rune, Abyss, and then Haven, and then the one Portal deck. All right, so I'll see you guys there. All right, here we are on Forest, and the two key things I want to pay attention to when we talk about these lists is the early game bodies in the Good Fairy of the Pond, because that card has been cut and put back in and cut and put back in all the time. And then also the amount and the exact which cards they choose for the late game optional stuff. So this list, of course, is running the one of Olivia. That's a very popular choice, right? Olivia is just a really good card, especially for a deck like this. Draws you some cards, heals you. One of the sort of outs to Force is like rushing it down with aggro and stuff, so having a little bit of heal also can be used as a little bit of removal, right? Because you get a second body to swing into to clear the board up and set up another Roach turn the next turn. Also kind of, maybe can Super Evolve a Roach. I don't know how often that comes up, right? But we also see some lists playing the Ligma, and or Limaga. And we also see some lists just not playing any of those, and they're just putting those copies of cards into the early game sort of consistency stuff, removal stuff. So it's a fairly standard list, right? They're playing the one of Olivia, and then the two Fairy of the Ponds. Some of the lists that I played against in the SVO were either playing 1 or 0 of those, which I was very surprised at. I feel like that card is really strong. Again, I am not the most experienced Roach player. I don't play the deck much. But yeah, another interesting thing I just noticed about this list is it's not playing the new 2-drop Fairy Fencer, I believe is the name, but the 2-drop 2/2 that gives you a fairy on play, and then when you Super Evolve, it becomes a 1 cost. So that's very interesting, actually. So this is Detonation Focus Forest list. So let's check out, I think this is Yokohama. So, like I said, 0 of the good Fairy of the Pond, 0 Fairy Fencer, Fairy Fencer. Oh, I just zoomed in. And they're still playing the one Olivia, but they use those Fairy of the Ponds to play more of the draw spell, and I believe more of that, I want to call it Airbound Barrage, but the 1-drop that deals 2 damage and then deals another 2 damage if you're combo 3. So yeah, we can kind of compare, right? They're playing 2, and then this list is basically the exact same list, except they cut the Fairy of the Ponds for 1 more draw spell and 1 more of these. So that's pretty interesting. Not a ton of new cards really being played here, right? Except the draw spell. Is that actually the only... Oh, and the Airbound Barrage. Yeah, and the Airbound Barrage. So then we have Yoshimoto Gaming's Roach Force, and this is sort of more what I've seen is like some of the Fairy of the Ponds, definitely the Fairy Fencer, and none of that late game, optional sort of body with the Olivia or the Lamaga. And then, of course, we have the last list here with no Fairy of the Pond, and then the one Lamaga, and then playing 3 of everything else. Yeah, 3 of everything else and 1 Lamaga. So, pretty interesting lists, right? Roach is basically 35 core cards, right? And then just we have that, like, 5 extra slots. I, of course, lost to Lamaga pretty badly in the SVO. If you guys want to check that out, I posted all of my games from that day. That was very funny. At the very end, I was like, oh, I won! Oh, no, I took 2 damage, So I think Lamaga is a pretty interesting card. A 10-10 is very big stats after Super Evolve, right? But of course, it's kind of like gimmicky. It's a little bit like Urias, right, in the sort of gimmick variety for these forest lists, and you might want something in the like consistency pool with Olivia, or sort of consistency in that you just play 3 of everything and 1, random thing, right? So those are the Roach lists. Nothing too crazy. And yeah, let me know if you guys are going to try one of these decks. I do think that Roach is going to get more popular. I wouldn't say in ladder, but I would say in tournaments and stuff. I'm actually expecting a lot of Roach, and I'm sort of thinking about maybe taking like a super anti-Roach lineup. That would be sort of, you take like an Aggro Abyss and a Ward Haven, right? So the way best of 2 deck, best of 3 works is you have to win with each deck. So if you take like a lineup where, if you see Roach and you take Aggro Abyss and Ward Haven, you win, because they can never win as Roach, because you have to win with both of your decks, right? So you kind of just concede the whatever Rune matchup, or instead of Rune and Roach, right? And then, because, both of those decks get hosed. Well, Aggro Abyss technically has a shot, and Ward Haven does not. And then you go, okay, they go into Roach, and they just lose 2 games in a row. Because you're just playing the hard counters, right? So something like that is kind of interesting to me. But I think if this tournament was in a week or 2, I would be more comfortable with that. But I do think we're starting to really get to the point where it's like, okay, Roach might just be the best deck in the format. But we're not like there yet. I don't think it's like flag planted, Roach the best deck in the format. I'm still like anti, in terms of, is Roach the best deck in the format? But it's getting close, for sure. Results-wise, and just, like, matchup-wise, too. Like, it's very good against the other 2 decks, right? In theory. So, that is Roach. Now we're going to move on to Sword. All right, now we move on to Sword. And there's a couple things I want to talk about when we look at the Sword list. One is the 2-drop selection. So, we have, obviously, the set 2-drops that we're always running at 3. The Ignominious Samurai and the Luminous Lance Trooper, right? But then we have that next level of, like, pretty guaranteed, but not always in the Prim, I would say, is, like, in that next level of, like, sometimes she's not in, but usually she's always in, but she's not, like, a 3 of in every deck, like the Ignominious Samurai and Lance Trooper. Then we have that next level where it's situational 2-drops that you run for certain matchups, right? So that is the Saria and the Fildau, and even the Coachwoman, which I'm really starting to like the Coachwoman, and we'll talk about that because one of these lists is playing the Coachwoman. And then another thing is, are they playing Quickblader or not? A lot of lists are running Quickblader. I'm not too big of a fan of Quickblader, but I do understand why it's used. Pretty good in some of those matchups where you really want to go fast, right, against Roach and stuff. Another matchup it's good into is Aggro Abyss. They have a lot of those 1 health things that you just one drop, just burst something down. So pretty interesting. Of course, it has like other niche scenarios in like the late game. To get some, better numbers and stuff. So as a 1 of, I can, kind of see. It's interesting, though, that this list is only playing 2 Ignominious Samurai. That is a pretty interesting thing to me. And then they're playing the Saria. Saria is pretty popular. I think this is probably for the Aggro Abyss matchup and Forest matchup, right? Then we have Valse. The Rose, the new card, Zerk, and all the other stuff, right? They're also only playing 2 Alberts. I like that trend. That's a trend that started as 2 Alberts instead of 3 Alberts. Sometimes is very clunky in the hand, and he's, unless you're super far ahead, he's only good at 9. but he is sometimes the only way to finish games, so it's a little, you got it. It's a hit or miss, right? And then the late game is the other thing I want to pay attention to in what late game cards are they playing. So all of the like 6 drops and below are pretty set, but then once you hit 7, it's like, okay, are we playing Olivia, Odin, Geno, Tentacles, and then Amalia is usually always in, but it's sort of that prim level where sometimes it's like 2 or 3. And then are we playing like a Urius? And then is there another card that I'm missing that people play? But Centaur maybe sometimes. But those are sort of the interesting cards I want to pay attention to because they all have really certain matchups they're better into, right? So this list is playing the 2 Olivias, the 2 Odins, 1 Tentacles, 3 Amalias, and 1 Urius. So Urius is really good in the Mirror, and it can be good in Rune as well. Tentacles, I know a lot of people are saying it's good in the Mirror. I haven't tried out myself. It feels really clunky against a lot of other decks, but the healing is pretty nice in the Mirror. And then the Olivia is sort of that nice balance of a little bit of heal, some draw, which Sword really needs sometimes, because the only other card draw is Amelia, and sort of Rose a little bit. So yeah, this is the list that Detonation Focus Me is playing. We're going to see a lot of variety in the Sword list. So next is the Yokohama. I want to say Yokohama Bay Stars because that's the baseball team, but it's not the Yokohama Bay Stars. And they are playing no 1-drop, only 9 2-drops, but they're playing another very fun card that I really like the idea of. The Band of Battle Princesses. That's, of course, the 2-drop, deal 4 damage to a random enemy follower. And then for 4, it deals that to 3 enemy followers. And cannot stack on 1 follower. I thought it could, but it does not. We found that out like minute 20 of the set release, right? And then of course they're playing the dogs. The dogs are still pretty popular from last set. And everything else is pretty same. They are playing 3 Alberts. But then you look at the late game stuff, right? They're only playing 2 Olivias, 2 Odins, 1 Tentacles, and 3 Amalias, compared to the Detonation Focus Me that's playing. So they're basically playing, 8 total late game cards, right? And they're playing 9, right? Yeah, 9. So it's kind of a balance. I think if you expect the mirror match, you'd want to play a little bit of more late game stuff, right? But yeah, so this is more of a focused list. I think this is probably more a little bit tuned for, I guess, like the mirror, but they're playing a little bit less end game, but they're playing a lot of those good early game cards. They're playing the 3 Alberts and stuff like that. So pretty interesting list here. I really like Band of Battle Princess. It's really good in the mirror match and against some of those very aggressive decks, right? Then we move on to Yoshimoto Gaming's Sword. They're playing the full 3 Quick Bladers. You can kind of count Quick Blader as a 2-drop, right? It's an early game body. I mostly just say 2-drop because that's, there's not a lot of good 1-drops in the game right now. And then they're playing, the basic Luminous and Samurai. 1 Saria, which is pretty interesting. 3 Prims, of course. And then the rest is the same. 2 Luminous Mage, which is a really interesting thing I've seen. I think a lot of people are either going 2 Luminous Mage or 2 Albert. I like more Luminous Mage. I feel like it's really good in a lot more matchups than the Albert, but that's just me. And then they're playing only 7 late game cards here. They cut an Amalia, and that's pretty interesting. This definitely seems more focused on not the mirror match, right? This is like, we're going aggressive, and we have the Quick Bladers for like the aggro matchups and stuff, and Forest a little bit too, right? And if we face the mirror, we just hope we draw into our good, stuff in the mirror. So yeah, pretty interesting list. And these are kind of the lists you can see when we get these sort of format like changing tournaments. Is like, this is obviously focused for not the mirror match. Like, they probably don't expect to play against Sword much with this deck, but yeah. Then we move on to Hokkaido's list, and then we see the Royal Coachwoman, which is a really cool deck. I really like this card for, like we said, a lot of those matchups like the Aggro Abyss. Forest, I really like it. I really like it into Forest because it's just a lot of bodies they have to deal with. Pretty good into the mirror match too. If you get Zerk on curve, you're probably going to be left with either the coachwoman or the 1/1 that comes out of it. So you'll be able to buff something and attack, right? Yeah, I just really like the coachwoman as a 2-drop. I've been pretty down on Saria, so I've kind of basically swapped Saria out for coachwoman, and I really like this so far. They're playing the 1 of Grimnir, which is just a card that really nice on curve, really proactive play, like I talk about a lot. A lot of Swords early game is reactive, right? It's a lot of rushers or things you're kind of like Vals and stuff like that. So having like this just, nice stats, ward that's going to have an effect later in the game is really nice in the Grimnir. They're playing the Daug, 2 mages, 3 Albert variation of this sword list, and then 2 Olivias, 1 Odin, 1 Tentacles, 3 Amalias, and 1 Urias. So pretty interesting list. This almost feels like a trying to go into the field like a build of this, right? They're like playing the Quick Bladers and stuff, and the Royal Coach went for like Forest and Agrobis, but they want the Urias for the mirror match and Rune. So this feels more like a just into the field type version of Sword, which is pretty interesting. So as you can see, we saw like very different styles of Sword in all of these. Let me know which one your favorite is. I really do like just the concise, bunch of 3 ofs, not getting too cute. I like the Band of Battle Princesses. So I kind of like this list a little more. I probably would swap the Tentacles for Urias if I were to make this list, but I am not I'm not on this pro team, right? So, but that is Sword. Next we'll talk about Rune. All right, now we move on to Rune, and every one of these lists is going to be that hybrid spell boost dirt build. And a couple interesting things to note is spell boost has been moving a little bit into putting back a lot of those old spells from set 1, like the Seraphic Tidings and the Insight, to supposedly help you in the mirror match. I think that works on paper. In my opinion, I just feel like you're sacrificing too much of the other matchups, and I think this is the type of build you would play if you are like in a 2-deck best of 1 tournament, right, where you're like, I'm probably going to be playing against Rune all day. I do think a build like this would work. If you're looking for ladder and stuff, I don't think I would play a list with the Seraphic Tidings and the Insight, just because very high chance to just explode to a lot of things. So that's just my opinion, but we will go over all of these type of lists. I think there's a pretty equal amount of this sort of anti-rune list and the more generalized, with the early game 2-drops, a lot of the 2-drops and stuff like that. This list, of course, is playing 2 Williams and 2 Normans, which is pretty interesting. And then 2 Snowmen, again, really good in the mirror match, right? And then, of course, they're playing the Insight and the Seraphic Tidings. And 1 Edelweiss, 1 Burgent. Yeah, okay. I'm not a professional gamer. I think Burgent is nuts. Interesting list. This is a very interesting list. I'd really love to know why they're only playing 1 Burgent. Burgent is really good. But yeah, pretty interesting list. And the Snowmen is a very cool sort of addition, right? It's just a 0-drop, spell eventually that locks something. And if you're not expecting it, it can be pretty strong, right? So this is Detonation Focus Mii's Rune build. Then we move on to Yokohama. They're playing kind of closer to standard list, but they're still playing the Insights, no Seraphic Tidings, and instead of the Penelope, they're playing the Melvi. I do think I like the Melvi a little bit more as a 2-drop, but I'm still a big fan of playing 2 or 3 and 2 of them. Only 1 Edelweiss here, 2 Burgents, 2 Williams, 1 Odin, which is pretty interesting. We do see some turbo, I would say pure spell boost list running Odin to just have another late game option, which is pretty interesting, but I think for me, I really think Rune's strength is as a control deck right now. It's a control deck with the best resource card in the game in the Dimension Climb, right? That's sort of how I look at it. But yeah, pretty interesting list. This is, I would say, that middle ground of this like evolution that we're seeing right now with the Rune lists, right? Because we're still playing the 2-drops. We're not playing Seraphic Tidings, but we're playing like little Odin, little spice Odin and some insight. So pretty interesting. Then we move on to Yoshimoto's gaming's list. This is much more standard, right? Still more insights. And then we see the 1 Penelope, 3 Melvy. Another interesting thing is that Flames of Chaos, the 3-drop that's like split damage depending on how much it's spell boost. That's a card I'd really be interested again to like hear their thoughts about. Like, I just feel like it's not too good into a lot of matchups, but I'm not sure. And then everything else. Oh, whoa! I just realized this deck is not running William. No Williams here. That's very interesting. That's very interesting. I wonder why. That's really interesting. They just must not expect to play against Sword or any of the board-based decks at all. Interesting. That's very interesting. Maybe they think the Flames of Chaos is like a better card than William. Which, maybe that I could see an argument for that. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. A lot of these room lists are interesting. Then we move on to Hokkaido's list. All right, this is, I'm just like making sure we're not, nothing crazy before I say, yeah, more insight. So I do think most lists, it seems like, are just playing insight now. And then the 2/2 on the Penelope Melvy. And then we have Edelweiss, 1 Burgent, 2 Williams, 1 Odin. And yeah, so those are the Rune lists. Very interesting, honestly. Very interesting changes in the Rune sort of evolution. I'd really love to hear like why they did some of this. I mean, speculation. Some of the lists, it seems like they're targeting the mirror match, and they might be also targeting some other lists. Maybe they don't care about Sword much at all, and that's why a lot of the lists are cutting William or cutting William down. But yeah, pretty interesting there. Next, we'll move on to Haven, because 3 people brought Haven, and then we will talk about the 1 Portal. But before all of that, we're going to talk about Abyss. I was like, I know there's a class missing. We're going to talk about the Abyss list here, coming right up. All right, so Abyss has 2 pretty popular but completely different builds right now. We have the mid-range to control build that I like, and then we have the aggro Abyss build that's really kind of targeting some of the slower decks and some of those other decks like Roach. And so this is the only mid-range Abyss list that was brought. So I'm going to just talk about this. This was Hokkaido, and then we'll talk about the 3 other aggro Abyss lists. So very standard build of this list. There are some lists that aren't playing the Odin, but this is deciding to go like 2/2 with Odin and Medusa. The 1 of Undead Soldier, I believe is the name of the 6-drop 3/3 that summons 2 zombies. One of the strengths of Abyss is zombies are really strong tokens. Very similar to like the Royal Coachwoman and the Bone Mancer, right? That's like an actual card. Just bodies that summon other bodies are really hard to deal with right now, especially when they come down early. So we have cards like the Soiree that give us sort of extra play. So we get like a play on 2 and a play on 3, which I really like. But I would say this is a very basic list. It's leaning a little more aggressive because they're playing the Razor Claw and they're playing the Mummy for extra face damage. And then, sorry, not the Razor Claw. What is it called? Rage of Serpents? It's the exact same card. Literally the exact same card. But I'm OG brained. And then, we have the Vuelas. Apollo is an interesting one of. But yeah, this is a pretty standard mid-range Abyss list. I just think this deck has a little too many weaknesses. I think that it loses pretty badly to Rune. It's like kind of a control deck, but not control enough, if that makes sense, right? So, pretty interesting, though. If you guys want to try a mid-range / control Abyss list, this is probably a good list to look at. So now we will go back and talk about all of the aggro Abyss lists. Aggro Abyss, of course, is not, it doesn't evolve too much. It's usually just the lists, right? Maybe 2 or 3 cards change. And yeah, so we'll get into it here. So they're playing all the 1-drops. The 2-drops. Barrel, of course, is such a great early game card for Abyss and aggro. 2-drop 3/3 is really hard to answer sometimes. It really requires a lot from your opponent, especially if you end up like losing the, or well, you know, you can't choose to go first or second. But if you go second and you coin barrel and then barrel, like, that's pretty good. You know, that's pretty hard to deal with. Of course, we have the Rage of Serpents. And then we have the Bat Summon spell. We're playing the Apollo. The Apollo's like interesting. I guess it's good against Sword. It's good into Forest. It's good into the Mirror Match. The Arrow. The Balto. 2 Baltos. Balto is really interesting because it kind of ends up being 4 face damage. Balto's a card that's like, watch out for Balto once Valnera gets in the game. Watch out. You know, it's like, oh, you know, that's pretty, you know, a lot of face damage. Vuela, the Amulet that summons Ghosts, Dark General, Gravy, and then the Olivia, and then the Odins. Very standard list, I would say. Nothing unexpected. It's just so what is this? A bunch of 3-ofs and then 2 Baltos and then 2 1-ofs. That's Detonation's Focus Me's Aggro Abyss. Then we have Yokohama. I keep wanting to say base stars. Yokohama's Aggro Abyss list. Very similar stuff. 2-drops didn't change, right? No, nothing. Literally nothing changed except they're playing a second Apollo, and then they cut the, what did they cut here? The Baltos. No Baltos, and they're playing second Apollo and second Olivia in those slots. So, you know, again, just like 2 or 3 differences. Then we have Yoshimoto Gaming's list, and this is a little different because they're playing the 2 Olivias, but they're playing the 1 Orthrus, which, of course, Orthrus I really like. I think she's just a really strong 2-drop. No Apollos, but they're playing the 1 Balto. So that is Abyss. Abyss is, you know, in an interesting spot, I think. It has things, but I just don't think it's strong enough to sort of take down those 3 top 3 decks, in my opinion, which are Rune, Roach, and Sword, right? So yeah, that is Abyss. All right, and finally we have Wardhaven, which 3 teams brought, and 1 Portal, which we'll talk about at the end of this section. Wardhaven, of course, is very just the anti-meta. If you think you're going to see Roach, you know, just target Roach and hose him with Wardhaven. Pretty much loses to everything else. So there's a couple ways you can take it as sort of, improve its strengths, which we see in adding 2-drops later in some of these other lists. And the adding the more 2-drops and stuff is just so that you really have a okay early game against Roach, and you just, you know, blow him out with the ward and stuff. Or you kind of go a little more control-y and try to shore up some of those other matchups to be like okay into like a Sword or something, right? So this list I would say is more normal, you know, like against like trying to you know, just like target Roach, but a little bit of okay stuff into the other decks, right? Because they're playing the Divine Thunder. Divine Thunder, when I first saw it, I was like, that's kind of stinky. That's kind of stinky. But then I thought about, well, most lists are running the Grail, and maybe Divine Thunder is just sort of, most times you do just want to blow like one thing up with the Grail. So being able to have a card like that, just blow something up, deals a little bit of damage for maybe like a Grimnir later on to do the effect, right? So I do kind of like the Divine Thunder. I think this deck just, it's so, like, Odin just destroys this deck with the Wilbur, right? And we'll talk about the results here after we finish wrapping up the decks. But what do you know? So yeah. So that is Detonation Focus Me's Wardhaven list, very standard, but the Divine Thunder. Then we have Yoshimoto's Wardhaven. Pretty, you know, some interesting stuff. We see the 1 of Ronavero, just like kind of a filled out replacement that doesn't get summoned by Aether, right? And you have a little bit of cute things with it being stealth, so maybe you can try to get in with it, and it's very hard to interact with. Other than that, we're playing the Grail too. So yeah, very, very, very standard. Oh, I swear I almost thought they were playing 2 Slavas. No, you gotta run the 3, I think. What was that? Yeah, okay. Then we have Hokkaido's Listen. This is where things get interesting. Is we're playing the Fox of Purity. Of course, that is just the 2-drop 1-3 ward. Pretty interesting. Again, I think that's for, like, just going, okay, if we're gonna beat Roach, we better beat Roach, right? Especially, like, I do not want to be, caught not beating Roach as Ward Haven, right? So you're just playing more 2-drops, just really blow Roach, out of the water. Then we're playing the 2 Divine Thunder and a 1 Grail. I think that's an interesting mix. 1 Odin. So yeah, this most of the lists are pretty standard. Not much to say because it's really only has 1 good matchup. I guess Aggro-Bis it's good into 2, actually. I should say it is good into Aggro-Bis as well. So, yeah, pretty interesting. So that was Haven. Then we have the 1 Artifact Portal list. Portal is just in a weird spot. Like, I played it sometimes, I'm like, wow, this deck feels insane. Like, it didn't set 1 when you draw well. But, yeah, I don't know. I think it's a little too draw dependent, right? I think a lot of the other lists are building to be just more consistent. And you can't really build it more consistent because if you don't see Alouette, you lose. And if you don't see Karula, you lose. And if you don't see enough of your artifact generators, you lose. And if your opponent sees too much of their good stuff, you lose, So yeah, but this is, kind of standard list. No 1-drop Elise. But they're playing, all of the new fancy schmancy stuff like the cannon or catapult, the catapult. They're not playing cannon at all, which is pretty interesting. The actual 5-drop one, right? The 1 of Odin, and then 2 Orcus and 3 Ralmia, 1 Sylvia as well. So that is Artifact Portal. Not much to say. I think you're probably playing this deck to beat something like Sword. But again, gotta draw well, right? You gotta draw well. So that is Artifact Portal. And so now we're going to talk about the results a little bit. So someone on Reddit, Mephisto_FN, put together these results here, which is pretty cool. So Yokohama Marinos won against DFM. Hokkaido won against Yoshimoto Gaming, and then Hokkaido also won against the Marinos. The results divided by class. I think this is pretty interesting. So, Artifact Portal, 1-0, 100% win rate, Aggro-Bis, 2-1. Roach Force, 4-3. Mid-Range Abyss, 1-1. Spellboost Rune, 2-2. At Wardhaven, 0-2. And then the really interesting result for me is Mid-Range Sword, 4-5. So it was the most played deck and had the worst win rate next to Wardhaven. So pretty interesting, right? So we can kind of look at the individual matchups. So we'll talk about Sword first, right? So Sword lost to Artifact Portal, lost to Forest, lost to itself, and then where are we here? Lost to itself, and then won versus Wardhaven, and then 1 versus Aggro-Bis. So really it was a bunch of mirror matches, and then they lost to Artifact Portal, and they beat Wardhaven and Aggro-Bis. So those are the ones you definitely want to beat, right? So pretty interesting results, right? What did Roach lose to? So Roach lost to Aggro-Bis. It lost to Aggro-Bis. Oh, and it lost the mirror. Okay, I was 1 in the 3-peat. So kind of makes sense, right? Roach is pretty bad into that deck. Which, kind of makes you think, do you play that in a sort of 2-deck best-of-3 format? Maybe, right? So, but yeah, that is the video. Again, I will be streaming a little bit later today, and we might cover some of the games on stream. I do want to do that at some point, because it'd be a lot of fun, I think. So, yeah, if you guys are interested in that, check that out. And we're going to just be doing a lot more videos. I'm preparing for the SVO this weekend. I want to try to do well. But I'm pretty undecided on the deck, so we're going to be doing a lot of stuff. So if you're interested in more Shadowverse videos, make sure to hit the like button. Make sure to subscribe. This is one of the best places to get content and get info about the game. And again, if you want people to play with, if you want to hang out with the community, we're building a really awesome community in the Discord. I'm going to leave a link to it in the description. A lot of really nice, cool people in there, always down to game. So yeah, check that out. And that's going to be it from me. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.